Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, I don't know if you can see it, but it is kind of drizzling and just a nasty day out today. We've stayed inside most of the morning hoping that this would kind of clear up. According to the weather report, there's a 0% chance of any rain today.
No rain.
But it's raining, so I guess that's one of those. I think being a weather forecaster is one of the only jobs you can have where most of the time you can be wrong and no one really cares.
You can still have a job even though you're wrong every day.
Right. But anyway, that's not why we're here today. We actually wanted to bring you guys along because recently one of our subscribers asked us a question that really got us thinking about how prepared are we really if things aren't always as good as they are now. The question was, what would we do with all of the animals on the homestead if suddenly all of the feed stores closed down and were no longer available?
That was a really good question. Kevin and I really enjoy being the type of thinkers that think about every possible scenario and how we would handle that and how we would survive in that particular situation. So this was a fantastic question. We want to answer that, or at least talk through some of the things that we think we would do. But first, today is actually the very first day that we need to start feeding hay to both Hope, our dairy cow, and her calves, as well as the beef cattle on the property. So before we answer that amazing question, we need to bring out the hay and start feeding the cows.
Now the grass on our property is pretty short. It's pretty much grazed down as far as it can get, which is why we decided, even though it's still pretty warm out, we're going to start feeding hay. Right now the cows are way down on the far hillside of our property and they're really having to search for grass, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We like them to get all over the property, but it's getting to the point where even in those areas, they don't have a lot left to eat.
The good news is, though, they're not up here right by the hay barn. So if we can get this going pretty soon, they won't notice what we're doing. Or at least if they do notice, they won't have time to get back up here before we can get in and get some of the hay bales out before they charge us and want some of the hay.
So the first thing we need to do is get that area set up. Then we'll bring the tractor in, we'll get some bales out, and we'll feed them some hay. So this old hay ring was here on the farm when we purchased the property. It's in pretty rough shape, but we're still going to use it anyway because I think it still has some life in it. Now, we have a decision to make over the course of this winter whether or not we want to be feeding our hay out of one of these hay rings or if we want to be unrolling the bales of hay in different parts of the pasture. We still haven't made a definitive decision. I've been doing a lot of research and there's as many opinions on the subject as there are people who you ask. So I know a lot of you are going to recommend that I watch Greg Judy and learn from him. I have been watching his videos and I'm taking his opinion very seriously. His preference is to roll the bales out. But for today, this being our first time feeding this group of cows, we are going to use the hay ring. Basically, for those of you who don't know how this works, we'll just bring a big round bale of hay. It'll sit in the middle of this ring. We'll take the wrapping off of the hay before we put it in, and then the cows can stand around this ring and eat the hay. And this helps catch some of it so that there's less waste all over the ground. So that is what we're going to do for today. And then we also brought Hope's hay feeder down. She has a little different style. We'll show you that in just a little bit. But like Sarah said, we want to get this one set up and taken care of before the whole herd of cows realizes what we're doing here, because I think they're going to be pretty excited about getting some hay. So I'm going to go hop on the tractor and we'll bring a bale over. Now you may be wondering why this bale looks so
Wonky.
right, frayed out, I mean beat up. It's because over the summer, one of the calves figured out how to kind of knock the door off of the hay, or that big gate that we have across the front of the hay barn, kind of wiggled their way in and then knocked the gate off, and then about 5 or 6 calves, or good sized calves,
Yeah, big calves,
found their way in, and for about 2 days before we noticed, they were eating off the bales of hay that were stored in the hay barn. So that's why some of these at the front are kind of like this. So it's still fine, but it just makes it a little harder to get them out of the hay barn.
Before we can put this round bale in the feeder, we do need to take the wrap, what's left of the net wrap, off. So we can just set it back in there. The net wrap is what keeps it all wrapped up tight, and it's kind of a plastic material, so we want to get that off of there so that the cows can eat that freely. We want to make sure that we gather it all up and take it out of here and put it in the garbage, because if that gets in any of your machinery, your
or if
tractor
the cows eat it, it can cause a blockage or a big problem with their cows.
Whatever, or it could hurt your machinery. So we're going to make sure to do that too.
Well, it didn't go as smoothly as I had hoped, but the bale is inside of the hay feeder, partially because this thing is so bent up, and because the bale fell apart, and because I just haven't loaded a bale in a hay feeder like that before. So the type that Hope has is completely different. I did that a lot last winter, but this was kind of new. So anyway, the hay is in there. We're gonna go grab another bale out of the hay barn before the cows realize what we're doing. We'll take that one out for Hope. We need to get the hay barn locked back up so they don't sneak in there and eat the bales that are still in there. Well, it finally stopped raining, so that is a blessing. We have a little reprieve while we work on Hope's area now. Now this is Hope's feeder here behind us. Her feeder, like I said, is a different style. Hers, it actually holds the bale up off the ground. We really like this style of feeder for her because she doesn't go through her hay nearly as fast. A bale will take her probably, 10 days or so, where with the other cows, because there's so many cows, they're gonna go through that bale in probably 3 days. So this will hold it up off the ground, and if we do get any rain or anything, it'll stay drier during that period where she's eating.
You can see that we have a cattle panel up and over this hay feeder. We've put a nice heavy tarp on it so that when it rains, it really does protect the hay well. Since she's not going to eat all this in a day or two like a big herd of cows, it's important for us to keep it nice and fresh and dry as long as possible. So this really does the job well.
So before we can load the bale in here, we need to actually take the feeder out into her pasture. We're not going to put it right up here by the barn because once we start feeding hay in this, she's going to spend the majority of her time wherever this feeder is. So one thing we didn't mention with the other cows as well is we do plan on moving. Even if we continue to use the hay ring, we're going to move the hay ring quite a distance each time so that they're not always congregated in one area all winter long. We'll do the same with Hope's feeder. We'll move it quite a ways away each time so that one area of the pasture isn't getting so trampled on and turned into a big muddy mess. All right, back on the tractor. We're going to haul this out into the pasture. All right, now we've Hope secured over in her other paddock so we can take some time and actually talk. Let me show you how this type of feeder works. So on this feeder, this front panel comes off so that we can load the bale of hay in here. Now, just like on the other feeder, we'll take the net wrap off the bale of hay, but on this one, it actually goes in, this way and fits right in here. Now, we did put some pieces of cattle panel down here on the bottom. It seems to help a little bit more with waste, and when we had our goats, it actually prevented them from climbing up in it quite as much. So that's how this type of feeder works. I'm going to load the bale in here, and then we'll put the front back on, then we'll open the gate and let Hope come have her first hay for the season. All right, that's all set for Hope. I'm gonna go open the gate and let her in here, see if she's ready for some hay. You ready for some hay? Now that we've given hay to both sets of the cows, let's go sit down for a while and talk about that question that we talked about at the beginning of the video. What would we do if all of the feed stores suddenly closed?
Well, this question is a fantastic question. It's actually one that Kevin and I have considered in the past. It's one of the main reasons why we realized we needed more land, and it's actually one of the main reasons why we decided to purchase this land.
So thinking about a situation where the feed stores would close, let's assume everything else stays the same except there's no feed to be gotten. The first thing that we would do is we would downsize the number of animals that we have. Even though I don't feel like we're overstocked on this land, we would definitely downsize so that we knew for sure we could produce everything that we needed right here on our land to keep the animals alive. The main drawing card for us with this land is that there was enough pasture and hayfield to be able to produce all of the hay and grass that we will need to take care of the cows right here on our property.
Not only cows, but the situation where the feed stores are closed, the rabbits can also over the winter survive on hay. They're not going to do as well, they won't produce as many babies, but they will definitely survive through the winter with hay.
Not only can the rabbits do well on the hay, but also our pigs can do well on hay. It's one of the reasons we were really attracted to the Idaho pasture pigs. Now I know the pigs can't survive solely on hay. We're not saying that, and we're not thinking that for ourselves, that those pigs can survive just on grass. Personally, I don't believe any pigs can survive solely on grass. But there is one animal on this homestead that is so extremely important, and that is Hope. Hope is our dairy Jersey cow. She is by far the most important animal on this entire homestead, and in fact, we're going to be getting a second milk cow, either buying one or next time Hope has a baby, we'll be using sexed semen to make sure that she has a heifer calf so that we can have a second milk cow.
Now, why would a dairy cow be the most important animal on our homestead? It's because of her milk. Not only can we use that milk for her calf and more calves in the future and for us and our family, but her milk can actually feed a lot of other animals on the homestead. The chickens, well, all birds, any poultry, you can feed them clabbered milk. Clabbered milk is just soured milk to the point where it starts turning into curds and whey. The pigs can definitely be fed.
They love it. We feed all of our animals this now.
Yeah, fed or supplemented. You know, between hay and the milk, the clabbered milk, that would be a perfect way for us to raise our pigs, raise our poultry. So for all of those reasons, Hope, and a dairy cow in general, is by far the most important animal on the homestead, because in the situation where the feed stores are closed and there's no feed to be purchased, she can really become that nutrition supply for a lot of the other animals on the homestead.
We always try to think ahead, and we always try to plan for as many situations as we can. And this is one of the situations we were really thinking about a year ago when we were deciding that we wanted to look for more land. This was actually one of the questions that was going around in our head, because we knew on our other property that we only had 15 acres of land, and that was not enough to raise all of the animals that we needed to raise and be able to produce all of the hay that we would need over the winter. On our new place here, we have just the hay field is 25 acres. Now that is set aside strictly for growing into hay, cutting, and baling for the winter. Out of that 25 acres, this year we did just one cutting, and we were able to get 100 of the big round bales of hay. Now we have a neighbor who comes and cuts that on what's called the halves, which means he comes and does all of the work of cutting it and uses all of his equipment, and in return we give him half of the hay. So our half this year was 52 bales of hay, and he got 52 bales of hay, and it's really a great way for him to get some hay and for us to get our hay virtually free.
So along with hay, which we can produce here, and milk, which we can have through dairy cows, we also are concentrating on learning to grow grains better. this past summer, we grew quite a bit of sweet corn. Now, sweet corn, we're not feeding to our animals, but by growing sweet corn, by growing corn in general, we're learning how to grow corn that could be grown for our animals if we needed it.
Right. Growing grains in general is a skill that we've been concentrating on. We want to learn how to do on a bigger scale. And I think over the next several years, you'll see that it's one of the things that we're going to do a little bit bigger each year until we get to the point where we can start using some of our homegrown grains as animal feed. Now, there's one final thing that I think needs to be talked about that would be essential during a time when there is no feed stores. Like I said at the very beginning of this, we would definitely downsize the amount of animals that we have. There are things that we would stop doing altogether. For instance, raising Cornish cross chickens. We would stop doing that altogether because they're not a sustainable source of meat, which is why we always keep heritage chickens on the homestead as well, not only for their eggs, but because we could use them for meat if we needed to. But on top of all of that, because we would downsize and stop doing some things, hunting would become even more important than it is right now on the homestead. Hunting is already an important part of our homestead. We don't necessarily show a lot of it here on YouTube because honestly it's being frowned upon. But here on the homestead we hunt deer, we hunt rabbits, we hunt squirrel, and we do as much fishing as we can because those are all essentially free or extremely cheap sources of meat for the homestead. Now this is our plan. This is what we've thought about for our homestead in our situation. Maybe you don't have enough room on your homestead to be able to grow all the hay that you need or to be able to raise a milk cow. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be planning for what would happen if that day comes. We're not the type of people who sit around and just assume that, everything's going to go terrible all the time. We really hope and we really think that, feed stores will be around. But it is something that you need to think about. What would you do? And if you have a smaller homestead, how would you handle the things that we've talked about today on a smaller piece of land?
If you have thought about this and you have a plan, we would love for you to share your plan with us and the rest of the viewers in the comment section below. We would love more ideas, and I know other viewers would love ideas as well. So go ahead and share those plans.
If you're enjoying our channel, we sure hope that you'll hit that subscribe button before you leave. We hope that you'll share our videos on all of your social media. That is by far the best way that you can help us out, and spread the message that there is another way to live. Get out of the rat race, get out of the cities, and live a nice, peaceful life in the country. Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.